Hello guys, so welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be discussing about event handlers as used in Fyne. So today we're going to cover several entry that is form entries for Golang and how we can capture those input and then display them back to the user. So with me here I have a very simple application and I'm going to run it so that we can see how it actually looks like before we proceed. So on this right here we're going to have our form, and on this other side you're going to have our output. So this is how we're going to structure our app. Here we're going to have the form, and here we're going to have our responses. So we can get started. We can define our form. Of course it's going to be a vstack because they're going to be vertically arranged. So I'm going to say a container dot new vbox, and then we can have a header dot new label, and then we can have maybe form, can have form, can have a form, and then you can just copy this form, and then we're going to have responses. So I can just say response, and then now our content is going to be horizontal split. So we're going to have a container that new h split, so that on this the other side we're going to have form, and then this other side we're going to have responses. So we can run this and see how it looks like, because it's going to be horizontal split, so that we can see how it looks like. So here we have form, here we have the responses. Of course we have to change this to responses. Now we can start adding our form components. So the first one, of course, we're going to start with the most simple one, the entry widget. So we can define it and say entry going to be a widget dot new entry, and then we can set our placeholder entry dot set placeholder, which can help the user to know what we want. We want them to maybe enter full name, and then since this is a form element, we're going to say here entry. Then we can run and see how it's going to look like. And to see how the entry will be displayed. So this is our entry. As you can see now, our entry and type is going to be displayed here in the responses. So what we're going to do is we need to define, we need to initialize labels so that when they change, we can update them. So we can say entry label, you can say widget dot new label, then you can say maybe here entry, and then I have to define this in the responses so that we can have entry label. Now for me to be able to capture this the entry for this and then update this label, I need to add an on handler event. So I'm going to say entry dot onchanged, going to be a function, of course, of a string, and then we're going to say entry label dot set text to s. Set text to s, and then let's see if we can display both the entry and then you can say Clinton Moshe, and it's displaying as we type. That's good. So the second one that we can look at maybe the password entry. You can just copy this copy that, and then I'm going to say here password. Can just capture this. Then you can say password. Then you can capture this one as well. Password entry, and then we can come here and say password entry, and then I'm going to initialize a label. Then I can say password label, and then here I can just come and say password. So on password change, I'm going to update the password label and set it to that. Now I have to come and add it to my form and add the password to my form and the output as well. So the password label, and then let's see how it looks like. Yeah, we have the name, and then we also have the password. And I haven't forgotten something here, because password entry, this should be password entry dot password entry. And then we can run this and see how it looks like, because it's not supposed to be showing the actual input. Yeah, as you can see now it's yes. So that when I type, and then we can do that. Yes. And another widget that we can be able to capture is the checkbox. So you can define a checkbox here. You can define a checkbox, and then we can say checkbox equals to widget dot new check, and then we can say maybe accept terms. Of course, we've all seen this when you're signing up into a new account. Then we're going to have a func of b. Of course, it's going to be a boolean. This one can just make it, we can just change this to checked, and then we can come here and say if checked is true, we are going to change our label. So we can come back here and define our label, and then we can say here checked label. Checked label, and then we can come here and say checked. Initially it's false, so you can say initially let's just say it's not checked. Then we can come down here, so that if checked is true, we're going to check checked label dot set text to checkbox, and then we're going to say checked because it's checked. Else you're going to say this, just going to copy that, and then you're going to say not checked. So you're going to come here to the form, then I'm going to add checked, then I'm also going to add checked label. Let's run it. And then we see how it looks like. Let's run it and see how it looks like. So this is how it looks like. You can see how you can type that. You can also type that, and then once we check it, checked, not checked, checked, not checked, then we can also close that. Then the next thing we can look at, it's a radio button. To look at the radio button, and then we can define it. Let's say radio equals to widget dot new radio group. Then we're going to have a string of operations, a string of, you can say maybe male, and then we have also female, and then here we're going to have a function of s standing for selected. Then we're going to repeat the same process. We're going to come back here, and then we're going to say selected. Okay, of course you can call it selected, but we're going to have a select, so you can just call it radio label, and then you can rename this and say radio, and then we can say none selected, unselected. And then we're going to come back here at the radio button. Where is the radio? Oh, sorry, this should be above that. Should be above. And then here we're going to say unselected. You're going to say radio label dot set text to s. And then for the form, we're going to have a radio, and then here we're going to have a radio label. And then let's run the app. Let's run the app, then see how it looks like. So we can select male, female, accept terms. You can supply your password. You can supply your username. Another thing we can have is the slider. So we can just call it slider equals to widget. There's new slider, and then we're going to have the minimum value. You can say it's 0. Then you can say the maximum value is 100. So we're going to define. You can just come here before we define that. You can define a label that's going to capture that data. So you can come down here and say slider label. So you can say slider. Of course, initially there is no value. Just leave it like that. So we're going to come back to the slider, and then I'm going to say slider dot on change. Dot unchanged is going to be a function of a float, and then we can say slider label dot set text to s. But now this s is is undefined. Let's define, of course, as a float, but set text accepts a string. So we have to format this value. So we can just do this. You can say empty.s printf, and then we can say slider. And then we define our own value, say 0.2f into f, and then we're going to pick the value. So that's how we define it. That's how we format some string. Of course, we'll cover formatting these strings later on. So we can include them in our app. We're going to have a slider. And then on the response, you're going to have a slider label. And then we can look at how this looks like. Can try and see how this looks like. So as we select, it's increasing and so on. As you can see, these values are real time. When I want to change them, they are updating. So that's how you handle user input. And then one last thing we can cover is select, where the user is given a list of options to select from. So we can say select drop. We can have a widget new select, and then we can have a list of options, which is going to be a string. Then we can say maybe maths, English, maybe Kiswahili, and so on. And then we're going to have a function of the string. Of course, we're going to just get the select drop down and do the changes. So apart from the slider here, we can come and copy that. Wow. And then after copying that, we can say maybe select label. And then we can say selected. So I'm going to come down here, and then I'm going to say, of course this is the drop down, I'm going to say select label dot set text to s, and then I can add these two so that I can update my application. Then you can say select a particular drop, and then you're going to have the response. It's going to say select label, and then we can run this to see how it's going to look like. Yeah, so we can select maths, English, Swahili. Yeah, so that's working fine. So we have defined various ways. Of course, there's a countless number of entry widgets that you can add, but as long as you have understood how to get the data and how to update it to the user in real time. So what if you wanted to capture all this data and then maybe display it somewhere? We can of course use a submit handler, of course using a button. So if I wanted to submit this form, I can just add a submit button, and then I can be able to capture all this data, and then I display it to the user. So you can maybe say submit button, btn, and then it's going to be a widget dot new button, and then after adding the button we're going to say submit, and then after submitting we're going to define a function. So I want when the information is submitted, I'm going to maybe print to the console. You can print maybe say form submitted, and then what if I wanted to capture the specific details like the entries and so on, just do for fmt dot println, and then you can say entry, of course that's the first one, entry, and then we can say entry. I don't want the label, I want the entry itself, but then I want to capture the value, so I'm just going to entry.txt, and then you can do the same to the password and so on. So you can do that, and then we have the password, then you can come here and say password label.txt. So under the form we can add this button, submit btn, and then I'm going to see how it looks like. So we can run this so that we can be able to see. So now if I submit, of course form submitted, entry, password, then you can come here and say maybe that the password, and then we submit it. As you can see, the entry inputs have been recognized. So guys, this is all we could cover in this video. Of course there are very many entry widgets, but as long as you've seen how you can implement them into your application and separate these concerns, it becomes a much easier way to develop applications. So you need to work hard. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.